Hello there everyone, welcome to this video. This is just the continuation of the two poll topics that didn't make it, and since the last video broke the 10 likes, that's what this video is, and this video should be live on Wednesday. Happy hump day to you guys. And yeah, so the first part of this video is about Starcraft's flash brain technology. So within the Starcraft universe, there's three races. There's the Terran. No, there's four. The Terran, the Protoss, and the Zerg. Okay, maybe there is three. And the Protoss are the first species. They're the oldest ones, the most technologically advanced. The Zerg's the second born species, and they're kind of like xenomorphs in the sense that they mutate and they evolve to their environments, and they use hive mind mentality. And of course, Terrans are somewhere in between the two, or even one of the newer species. So to get back on the point, the Korpulu sector was colonized by Terran or human criminals. They didn't want to risk any innocent people, because if something went wrong, then this way it's only criminals who die. So the Korpulu sector over time is popularized kind of like Australia by a majority of criminals. So over time they developed their own technology, and one of these technologies is this flash technology. So in most military, in our time and within our reality, it takes a while to train people how to drive a tank, how to fly a helicopter, a plane, how to manage, unpack, and pack, howitzers, artillery. And it's a long, arduous process of training. Well, in the Starcraft world, they can flash whole training manuals onto someone's brain. There's a way where they can just take a mass of knowledge or information and just put it onto your brain. Now, it is taxing on the person, but after that happens, this person knows how to utilize that technology. And of course, within the Terran or the Starcraft world, Terrans use hard suits, they're called. They're these giant suits. They look cool as hell. And, an average person wouldn't have weeks or months, especially with the Zerg, or a wartime scenario, to learn the particulars, so they just use this technology on someone's brain, and then they know how to utilize that equipment. So same thing with siege tanks, race, battle cruisers. If they need more pilots or need more, specialized infantry, they can just flash this information and knowledge directly into their head, and then they have it. And of course, within the universe, the interesting thing is that's not the only thing they use it for. In this one, they actually give someone memories of having their homeworld being invaded by the Zerg, and this person seeing their loved one die, being devoured by the Zerg. So this person joins up with the Terran Marines to fight the Zerg, not knowing that this poor bastard is believing a false memory. So it's a technology that is used kind of in a gray area. There's also another situation where there's a female serial killer that they use this technology to manipulate her personality, to make her more compliant, to make her more sane in combat scenarios against other Terrans or other Zerg or even Protoss. And it's just a very interesting technology that they use to give soldiers the information they need. They also use it to manipulate the brain functions of people. If you've played StarCraft and you've never wondered why there's no more morale problems, that's because some Marines, or a good majority of them, have fear removed from their brain. It's an emotion they don't comprehend. It's emotion that doesn't exist. So within the game of StarCraft, when you see the Marines just holding the line, blasting away until whatever in front of them is dead or they're dead, that is why. And some of these Terran Marines, there's even Tychus Finlay from the series, who they do take criminals. They take these hardened multiple life criminals and say, okay, you can get your freedom if you can script in the Terran Marines, and the Terran Marines, and if you live, you get your freedom. If not, well, you die. Or they confine them to their suit for the remainder of their time, and they're just put in combat situations. And that's why StarCraft, to me, is a very interesting universe. If you want to get into a very interesting world, it's the StarCraft one. The books, the video games, even if you just play the single-player campaign, it's very cool because it's this futuristic world, but yet it's still stuck in this very rustic, like, Civil War era kind of motif. You have the Terran Confederacy, which, before any of you oversensitive ninnies say anything, it's just a region, it's a form of government, a confederacy. So of course they do borrow old iconography from the very real Confederate States of America. So there's this Terran Confederacy. There's the Sons of Korhal, who later becomes the Dominion of over tyrannical force. And of course there's Raynor's Raiders, which James Raynor is this very cool freaking guy who was a criminal, becomes a lawman, and then later future rebel and freedom fighter. So it's just a very cool world, and you have all these technologies. You have siege tanks, you have Goliaths, Wraiths, battle cruisers. It's a very cool world. If you're into military stuff and sci-fi stuff, you would absolutely love these books, even if you haven't played the video games. And StarCraft gets my personal seal of just badassery, because I grew up in the 90s playing StarCraft Brood War. It's a very, I don't know, it's just a world that's really imprinted itself on me, and as well as the just story is cool. So on to the next topic, which is androids, which I'll try and give this part an interesting take. So the problem with current technology is humans are a little bit iffy about having androids. Of course, there's people with technology, and Xiohns actually did a good stream about this. That link to his stream should be in the description down below or pinned in the comments, where he talks about the technology of cybernetics and all kinds of cool stuff. It's a very cool long stream. So combat androids, there always needs to be for a human element to push a button, because at current it's not a good idea. And of course, if you've seen the Terminator movies, it's not exactly a good idea to give weapons to an artificial intelligence that is sentient, right? Because there's always the chance of it turning its guns on you. Of course, not to get really nerdy on you, but if you ever heard of IG88 from Star Wars, it's a robot that they gave sentience. It's an assassin droid. But the problem is, the droid just decides, fuck you, and he kills the entire staff, the entire science team, like 40, 50 people. It goes nuts. And the scary thing about IG88 is he replicates other frames, and he has it set up to where he can transfer his consciousness on destruction to the other frames. So when you kill this IG88, it's not dead. It just uploads its consciousness to another robot. And within the Star Wars books, it's not really revealed in the movies, but IG88 causes a robot rebellion on a factory planet, and he's actually on one of the Death Stars when it explodes. And he actually fires the Death Star. It wasn't humans. Humans only thought they were firing the Death Star. But in reality, you had a robot upload its consciousness to a super weapon. So as far as combat androids are concerned, humanity is smart in the sense that they're not giving them sentience or the ability to think for themselves, because that's just a really, really, really dumb idea. It's not worth the cost of saving human lives, unfortunately. And in combat, I think there will always be a need for a human presence. Combat androids are probably a long way off, but if someone does develop this technology, you better hope there better be a Western flag on that robot, because if not, kiss your ass goodbye. And of course, if you don't know, there's a very real robot company, if you haven't seen it in the news, Boston Dynamics. There might be some footage here post-editing. But yeah, these are freaking robots that move and walk around. Now, of course, Boston Dynamics says, oh, we're not putting weapons on these things. Well, but you're working for the Department of Defense. Ergo, which means that the combat chassis and robots you're making eventually are going to have guns, weapons, or at least technology you put on them to carry out death in a technological scale. And of course, with and combat androids, we already have this to an extent, right? With drones, the Reaper drones. Every country now, even the Russians, have their own unmanned aerial vehicles, which are things that can be flown from 8,000 miles away in an air-conditioned room where a dude just hits a trigger on a joystick. And somewhere 6,000 miles away, some poor bastard eats a Hellfire missile. And of course, I don't need to go over the moral consequences of that. There's even recently where some poor aid worker and his family got nuked by some asshole drone operator. So in the sense that could it save lives? Soldiers' lives, yes. But in reality, no one's going to be fucking with combat androids unless operated by a human being. There's even unmanned tanks now that are controlled by someone, little drone tanks. So the more technology progresses, the more you even see the early development stages of this with robots, Boston Dynamics robots. Just instantly always assume it's going to go towards development of weapons of some sort, without a doubt. And of course, I do not believe Boston Dynamics. I don't believe these corporations that say, oh, we're just developing these for humanitarian reasons. No, you're not, man. Even you have reports of drones being used in World War II, believe it or not. The Germans had this little remote-controlled tank. Now, it was in the latter part of the war. The Germans were technically losing, but they did have remote-control tanks that was wire-guided, and they would drive it under tanks and detonate them, thus destroying the tanks. So it's not a new technology. Combat drones have been kind of around since the 1940s. And even after that, you had the Americans experimenting with remote-controlled bombers. That's an interesting story, which I'll get into another time. So combat androids were far from them being a very real thing. And I'm hoping they're never really a real thing. Because you have to take into account, right? What if someone hacks 2 or 3 of these? And that's a problem with technologies. No matter how well intentioned weapons are, even in the form of defense, it's always gonna go bad. And let's hope it doesn't get on the scale of Star Wars with the systems of CIS. The Confederacy of Independent Systems. Let's hope this just doesn't get to that point where you have literally thousands of combat drones engaging on the battlefield, which, yes, it saves human life. But are you willing to take that risk for the rest of humanity? Well, we have nuclear weapons that can end our world 10 times over, so why not have sentient robots? I mean, humans are kind of stupid when it comes to that. So you can damn well bet that eventually in the future, someone's going to come up with a combat android. And just think, what if someone else develops the technology first? Let's say some shadowy terrorist organization creates combat androids where they're loaded up with an explosive belt, and they just walk into someone's house and bust through the door, and then just walk into the middle of the house and yeah. I'm not trying to give anyone ideas here, but we're just talking hypothetically, of course. And yeah, that's why technology is frightening. No matter how well-intentioned technology it is, usually it ends up being utilized by the military-industrial complex, military generals, and sick bastards in and out of uniform, because somewhere out there is either a politician or a general going, yeah, I love it. Robotic death on a large scale, right? And of course, someone in another Discord, actually, someone was talking about, nanotechnology. And I brought up the idea, well, wouldn't that be terrible if you had an artillery shell that was loaded with weaponized nanites, right? So the shell flies over your enemies, explodes, and dusts them in millions of particles of these nanites that just eat everything, right? Tanks get turned to dust in buildings. And of course, if you haven't seen G.I. Joe, Rise of Cobra, that's one of the weapons. And that movie kind of sucked, but when they covered that part about weaponized nanites, I was like, okay, that's pretty badass, even if it is terrifying. So hopefully you enjoyed these extra topics that I decided to do in a video for this glorious hump day. Hopefully it's rest of the easy week into Thursday and Friday for everyone out there. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this. Drop a like, drop a dislike, and I'll see you guys next time. Take it easy, and have a good one.